The United Kingdom Prevention of Terrorism Act uses somewhat different language to define terrorism. Their definition is the use or threat of action where the use or threat is designed to influence the government or to intimidate the public or a section of the public, and the use or threat is made for the purpose of advancing a political, religious, or ideological cause. The Act goes on to qualify that in case of an incident where firearms or explosives are used, no direct attempt to intimidate or coerce the government or the public is necessary. It is sufficient that a violent act which has a political, religious, or ideological cause is carried out. The Prevention of Terrorism Act is interesting in its breadth. Section 4 of the Act allows for the definition and therefore the purview of the Act to include terrorist actions outside of the United Kingdom and endangering property or persons outside of the UK. Additionally, in regard to the coercion of government, the Act includes governments other than that of the United Kingdom. Effectively, then, the Prevention of Terrorism Act encompasses a worldwide scope. Furthermore, Section 5 of the Act allows for the identification of proscribed organisations, with violent acts taken for the benefit of such an organisation being classified as terrorist activity. For example, under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, a violent act perpetrated by a member of Sinn Féin, which is a legitimate political organisation, could be construed as terrorism if it were viewed as being for the benefit of the IRA, a proscribed organisation.
Breaking news out of Russia, Moscow's busiest airport. The Medvedev airport was the site of a terrorist attack just earlier today. Now, the explosion at the international arrivals area of the airport killed at least 35 people, including 2 Brits, and more than 130 people have been injured.
The European Union Council framework decision on combating terrorism takes as its basis prior conventions of the United Nations, including those listed on the screen. Rather than being concerned with the definition itself, the framework is concerned with ensuring that member states of the EU, as well as legislation and judicial activities, are articulated across the member states. As a result, the framework deals with the following items. Scope. The scope of the framework includes a number of principles. The first is the territorial principle, through which member states have jurisdiction if a terrorist activity is planned or perpetrated within national boundaries. The active personality principle, through which states have jurisdiction if the perpetrators are of local national origin. In addition, if the target includes peoples or institutions within a member state, that member state has jurisdiction. As an example then, France has jurisdiction if the perpetrators of an activity are French, or if it takes place on French soil, or if it targets French citizens wherever they happen to be in the EU. Second, terrorist activities. The framework states that the following offences defined according to its national law which are intentionally committed by an individual or a group against one or more countries, their institutions or people with the aim of intimidating them and seriously altering or destroying the political, economic or social structures of a country will be punishable as terrorist offences. A comprehensive list is provided of activities which may be considered terrorist activities given specific motivations. The framework distinguishes between terrorist activities perpetrated by individuals and by groups. Third, instigating, aiding, abetting and attempting. Member states are required to consider terrorist-oriented activities beyond the commission of violent acts. Penalties and sanctions. Offences and activities of terrorists, including the aiding and abetting of terrorists, are punishable by effective, proportionate and dissuasive penalties. Mitigating and aggravating circumstances. If the offence is committed with particular ruthlessness, is of a serious nature, or is committed against heads of states, government members, police or internationally protected persons, the penalties and sanctions may be increased. This is because the seriousness of the crime is elevated to an aggravating circumstance. In contrast, when the offender renounces his or her criminal activity and cooperates with the judicial process, mitigating circumstances transpire and penalties and sanctions may be reduced. Next, extradition and cooperation. If a terrorist crime is committed in another member state or against another member state's institutions or people, that member state must extradite that person to the authorities of the offended state for the purpose of prosecution. If multiple states have jurisdiction over the criminal's activities, they shall consult one another to coordinate prosecution effectively. And finally, exchange of information. Each member state shall designate an operational contact point for the purpose of exchange of information and for applying the framework decision. What that essentially means is that each member state has the right to gain access to perpetrators of terrorist activity if they have some overriding interest in a particular incident.
For the past 8 years, the number of Israeli civilians within the range of rocket terror has grown to approximately 1 million people living under a constant threat of over 10,000 rockets and mortars.
We now want to bring in radical cleric Amjem Chowdhury. Nick, I know you've interviewed him in the past and have a few questions for him today.
Mr. Chowdhury, you've been listening to us discussing here your reputation in Britain. When you look at this latest effort to attack the United States, do you not worry that it is your voice that's helping radicalize people who want to do this?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, there is a struggle taking place globally, and our voices are there merely to portray the truth. Whether we like it or not, there are two camps in the world today. A camp which believes that sovereignty and supremacy belongs to man. At the head of that is Barack Obama. And the other camp believes that sovereignty and supremacy belongs to God.